everyone, and welcome to the DigitalEDU Dialogues podcast, where we talk about trends in higher ed, issues, and offer practical solutions. I'm your host, Angela Britcher, and joining me today are Valary Oleinik, who is an expert on gamification and learner engagement. And we work with Valary in her role with the U.S. Distance Learning Association. And also joining me today is Sheila Fry, the COO of the Babb Group. Welcome, Valary and Sheila.
Great to be back here.
Hi. I know.
Well,
like
we are very
clubhouse.
We have already been talking to the point that we can't stop talking about our topic for today, which is a little different take on AI and higher ed. We are going to focus on AI and accessibility. The three of us love to talk about different ways that we can use AI for good in education. And we also all work with accessibility, and we know how important that is. So today we're going to talk about the marriage of those two topics and ideas. And I want to start with talking about accessibility and what that means to each of us, because it's a really broad term. And I think it can get kind of stuck in, we were talking about some of the requirements that there are in K-12, and we can get stuck in thinking about accessibility just referring to that population. But what does accessibility mean to each of you? Sheila, if you want to kick us off.
Yeah, I mean, you made a great point. It's beyond those federal requirements. I mean, things when we quote things, when we talk about it and people say you have to design to this, I mean, you typically hear it's the WCAG, the Section 508, all those types of federal things. But it goes much more beyond that. And Valary knows this from a presentation I did at a USDLA conference a couple of years ago, talking about accessibility, very near and dear to my heart, with a daughter with special needs. So approaching it, and what does it mean to me, is it's more of education for all. How is content going to apply to everyone so everyone can gain an education, everyone can access the content easily, people don't have to struggle, and trying to bridge that learning gap. So that's kind of what, in a broad way, beyond those federal terms, what accessibility really means.
Great. Valary, how about you?
Yeah, I think education for all. I think that's a beautiful container to put it in, because that really is what we're talking about. And that's why often I encourage people to keep checking in with their own definition of it, because we all know, when the legislation even first started and people said disability, they meant something very different than what is encompassed in our modern day legislative even approach to it, not even talking about just the humanity of we should be trying to help people. So I think just constantly kind of revisiting that. And I also encourage people, just as we're talking today, to kind of in the back of their mind think about, there's that big A accessibility that we're talking about, the Title II and the alphabet soup of of things. But there's always that little A accessibility which underpins all of it. Like, if I don't even have access to the technology, it doesn't matter if the technology is accessible, big A accessible. So I think there's also, just for me, that's a really big conversation piece that I'm always kind of sticking back in there, because we do get a little bit stuck, I think, in the big A part of it, which is super important. And the other word that I just wanted to introduce today, because I learned it recently, you probably know this one already, but I was watching an autistic influencer on Instagram, and he uses the term differability, which I love, and I don't hear that used as much, and I hope people start to use it more, because I think it does so many beautiful things with the language of it. It's not it's not against, it's not worse, it's not we have this kind of view of it, but it's different, and that, to Sheila's point, everybody's different, and we want to help everybody.
Yeah, and you make a great point talking about, the big A and the little a, because that's what everybody thinks about, is that big A. And it's not, it could be an age, young or old. It could be someone, an autistic, or someone's blind, or what, they're different abilities, like you were referring to. But it's more of even taking it beyond accessibility, but how you can design to make it inclusive. And that's what I think, from as we get deeper into talking about the AI aspect of it, where you can really use AI to help you create those inclusive environments that will instantly make everything more accessible. So more of ease to learn, less ability driven.
Yes, and I think like this focus on the little a piece of it and the access part, because it levels the playing field for everyone in the class, not just by ability, but I think about how many times I'm working with adult learners or learners who are traveling for work, learners that are trying to access their classrooms from work, even if it's the types of webinars that we all participate in, and what it means to be able to have access to the learning materials. So maybe it's, oh, I'm at work and I don't have my headphones. I need the transcript for this video. Or I love to share this experience even with my students. How many times I'm at an event as an instructor where I'm in the middle of nowhere at a kids softball game and I need to access my classroom to help a student, right? So how can I do that from my phone?
Yeah.
So thinking about, our learners are just like us and they're really busy and there's all kinds of reasons that they may not be able to access a particular piece of their classroom on a given day. So as to Sheila's point, how do we create an inclusive environment where they have access to some version of the learning materials? I've heard instructors ask questions like, well, do I have to provide a PDF of this as well? Like, yes, because we never know when a learner needs to download that before they're getting on a plane. And so thinking about things like that, or you're accessing your classroom while you're waiting in a waiting room somewhere. So how do we make accommodations for all of the different ways that we are accessing our work? All right, so let's talk a little bit more about that and about AI and how we can leverage AI to create a more equitable learning experience, specifically for students with disabilities, but also, as we talked about, for all of our learners.
Yeah, I take a stab at that first, because I can't wait to hear Valary's talking about gamification and how she designs those things, because that's where some of the trends with, the clients, they want a more engaging environment. They want to be able to do this and they want to have multi-use for beyond maybe just one type of learner. It could be a continuing education and a 4-credit. How can they change that? So that makes using these tools from an AI perspective that much more important, because you want to be able to create that diversity in it. So from my perspective and my take on that, on kind of an option for doing that, is starting with it from a design perspective, not just figuring out how you're going to do the course and then make it accessible or inclusive or the options. Day one, it's part of your process. With the design, how are you going to do it? So using those AI tools to help you brainstorm options for how somebody can submit something. How can I teach this in a different way to present something? What options, ask it, what options should I include for someone who has these types of disabilities? What concerns do I need to make sure that I'm addressing? We've all sat in different trainings for the big A. You need to have an alt tag, you need to have this, you need to have a PDF, those types of things. But we sometimes forget the accessible, the small a part of it, where how are we designing for it? So that's really where AI can have a tool. Or if you're doing something that's competency based and they have an assessment and a pre-test or something, how are we providing that feedback? The AI can help you create that feedback. And if you've missed that, here's the other tool that you can use to learn it better, to reflect and relearn and review before you're coming back again. So these can really be tools for students who, we know this when we see it. Not everybody likes to read a textbook. We always give the textbook. We pray the students will read the textbook. They don't always read the textbook, but they might see the PowerPoint. They might go to that first. But so how to enhance that, how to make that really valuable, because we know there's things in the textbook that are important for that core learning knowledge that probably may not be covered there. So how are you doing that? Maybe they want to listen to it. They're on a train, they're traveling, they're on an airline. How can I learn and stay on track with my content? So giving them options to see that, tying in videos and whatever it may be, interactive gamification, simulation scenarios, those types of things that allow someone to learn the concepts in a different manner while making it approachable and accessible to everybody.
Yes, I love following Sheila, because I'm just like, yes, yes, what she said, yes. I'm sorry. I think Angela you had a thought you wanted to
No, I
jump
was
in.
going to just encourage you to jump in, Valerie, and to continue on this thread and talk a little bit more about how we can incorporate this in when we think about gamification.
Yeah, and not just gamification. I mean, I think Sheila hit on one of my favorite gamification things, though, which is choice. And I think that is something that some instructors struggle with. We're used to, we kind of have the course, and it's, this is the steps, and these are the modules. But this is that assistant to help them start to re-envision what that could look like, that there are multiple ways to get to a learning outcome, that it's not, it doesn't have to always be read this, answer, reply to 3 of your friends, whatever. Yeah, that should not be happening. Sheila, I know, has come and talked at USCLA about that as well, thankfully, because that should not be happening anyway, but it is. But yeah, the whole choice thing. But I think also we're kind of hopefully getting to a place now where, um, I was looking at the EDUCAUSE Horizons reports to refresh what their categories were. And last year it was like AI fluency. So like the instructors, everybody was still kind of in that like, okay, we're not really sure how to do this or why to use it. Like by now, people have kind of gotten the prompting thing. Most people that are using it have kind of gotten the prompting thing. They could get better at it. There's, always little tweaks and there's always things we could learn about it. But most people have kind of gotten to that part. But where I see people get stuck is what you're talking about. Like, why am I doing this? Like, what is the problem I'm trying to solve? Like, they just jump in, they hear AI, and like, oh, I should use AI. Like, okay, yes, but like, let's a little more to Sheila's point about the planning. Like, let's look at the big picture first. Let's not just jump in and start, even redesigning lessons. Like let's look at it a little more holistically. And I think a big thing that now we're getting to a place where the students, we all know they're using it. They're using it in some form, just like they've been using technology for years. Some of them are using it better than others. So, so it's like now it's like, how do we help them to co-create with us? So instead of us necessarily going in and using the AI to personalize and add choice and things, like now I think sort of some of the discussion really can start being, how do we invite them into the discussion, because they're the ones who are ultimately going to also need to learn how to use these tools. There's always like the topic of the course, and then there's all those like sub skills that they're learning, the teamwork, the critical thinking. Like that's where this comes in, and students are asking for it. There's been a lot of instances, people I've talked to recently, students want to know. And so like to the accessibility piece, we can't design individually for each student necessarily, but now we can co-create with them, and we can see where their problem is, and AI can actually help to identify that. We can help them to then make those adjustments. Like maybe they need to take the syllabus and have it chunk it up into smaller pieces, because they have ADHD and they have to have that more structured thing. Or maybe English is not their first language, so maybe taking a certain passage they're really having trouble with and having AI summarize it in a slightly lower reading level, so that they can at least get into so there's like so many ways that we can invite them into it, and it's not just about us. I think that, to Sheila's point, we have to design better to set up the framework, but then thinking about where those opportunities in that framework to leave some openness, so that they can come into the conversation with us, because
That's what
learning's
yeah.
active.
The
You know,
faculty is the expert. Use the faculty for their knowledge and their expertise. And I'm
exactly.
also seeing that the LMSs are responding to this as well with AI. I've seen some institutions and a couple that where I still teach have an AI assistant in each classroom. So it's even gone beyond, and it's kind of the evolution is kind of interesting for it, because where I've seen first of, here's this little chat bot in the corner, and if you've got the question or whatever, you can do this. Well, now it's expanded. Now it's saying, it's giving them reminders. Here's what's due each week. If you have this question, how can it help you? So, do you understand this? So it's really, so the LMSs are responding to this need to create something, how can AI help them learn and do all this? And to your point exactly, to sit there and try to say, how can students need these as a work skill. Like we said, AI is not going anywhere. We all use it, but we already have years and decades of core knowledge to pull from, where AI just helps us save some time.
Yeah.
Where we don't want them to get to the point of, I'm just using it to make you think I have core knowledge when I don't. But how can AI help them brainstorm? So we need to also, in that design process, and even faculty, how are we looking at how they can use it? Maybe you brainstorm this and show me the outline that did this. Don't put it into AI when you're all done and say, rewrite my paper, because then when the checkers check it, it comes back 100%, when they may have only maybe AI, fixed 10 or 15%. Maybe it's more of, put it in AI. What does AI tell you to do? And you have to submit those suggestions to it, and then what you're going to enter, so you're, for a better lack of term, forcing the citation like you would for a paper, that you would just show the proof of how you use. So then they're learning skills.
Yeah.
How would businesses, how are you going to do this? Because then you're incorporating that, and you're pulling out the problem with them having it written by it. So if they still do it, you've given them every breadcrumb trail option to avoid it. But just being able to use it. But and those AI tools within the LMS is just going to get better and better. So some of them will even help design content in courses. It varies by that. Some are just third-party software, which is what the LMSs are integrating for these little AI student chat bots. But they're a powerful tool. Even tutoring tool with AI is very helpful, especially for those students. The English is a second language type thing. So it's exciting to see the growth, and it's very quick.
It is. And I sometimes worry it's a little too quick. And so I know there's been, I know we shared an article we were all looking at, and in there, there was a university in British Columbia that tested the various LLMs. Now, obviously, if you're going through an LMS, there's another interface that hopefully is accessible. That's a whole other, like the ed tech is moving so quickly that sometimes, and I've heard this from students, like, yeah, they're not really designing with us in mind. Like they're designing to get the AI into their tools. They're designing to, keep up with, the other competitors and say we have AI features. And I think that's something we have to watch. And I can't say this LMS is better at it or worse or whatever, but I think that's something just in general, and especially when we talked about like third-party tools and you're bringing in other things, that's always a concern. And so I think that's something to look at, because some of the underlying LMMs have not tested well for accessibility at all. And so
they're narrow in their focus. They only know what they know.
Exactly. So yeah, I'll be interested to see. I think you're right. There's so much amazing quick work happening, and there are so many amazing hackathons at universities that are focusing on using AI for accessibility and coming up with different tools, helping students navigate campus, or helping, with all sorts of different types of all types of disabilities and all types of different solutions. I think that's also really cool as we kind of talk about the learning experience, that there's a lot of these AI accessibility things that are sort of peripheral to it. It may not just be the course itself. It may be, how do I access student services, or how do I,
Exactly,
navigate other parts of my journey.
Because that's what's going to keep them there. That's what's going to make them persist. That's what they're going to have, their retention. And we know retention, not to go down another cornhole, but retention is a big deal in higher ed, obviously. So if the AI tools can help assist with the whole higher education experience, how can it support them, mentally, educationally, academically, financially, whatever, accessing all those aspects of an institution, it just makes the whole experience better.
And I like this idea you're talking about, the idea of focusing on students, because when we collaborate with students, they are letting us know what they want and what they need. And they're creating some of these tools. I think about students I know that are creating their own apps and sharing them with their classmates, or even they're discovering ways to have their textbooks read to them in a different language, or their textbooks read to them at all, right? That's what, if they need that kind of reinforcement in their learning, that they're finding the ways to do that, and they're sharing it with their classmates and sharing it with us. So I think so many times we think of it as sort of top down, like, well, the AI company needs to create it, and then we need to figure out a way to integrate it into our LMS and into our classrooms. But also understanding that we need to collaborate with our learners, because they are generating ideas and they are creating tools as well and sharing them. And as the user, and a user with skills, they are, I think, they're meeting almost halfway with, we've got AI companies over here and we've got learners over here, and they're really coming together to create some magical tools that are going to benefit other students.
Yeah, I think because I think we have to remember they grew up in this digital soup. And so for them, there's not, and for work, those of us in the workforce as well, that line between work and learning and whatever, thankfully is disappearing. I always hated when it was like, you go to work and then you go to training, like, you go to school, and then they were never really separate things. But now, because everybody can be not only a consumer, but a producer, because they have these magical little devices in their hands, people are taking more control over being participative. And that's not just, I think we have to look at the larger societal trends. I was in 2023, I guess, I spent most of the year talking about hybrid learning, not to go down the cornholes, but it's relevant. But the idea was, what I was trying to impart to people was, hybrid didn't come about as being a big thing because of COVID. Hybrid came about as a big thing because people recognized they could control consuming the content. I mean, we had mixtapes back in the dark ages, and like things like that. We had VHS tapes before we could binge watch Netflix. Like, people for decades have been trying to, assert their participatory power, and now they just have so many great tools to do it. And if we just, lean into that and let them do it, as you said, they're creating great tools. Many of them.
Or finding new ways to use old tools to help them with their learning. So one of you said something that touched on my next question, this idea about bias in AI, right? We hear it in the news all the time, the bias of AI, but when we hear about it, it's often referring to things like gender and race and ethnicity issues, but we're not hearing a lot about it with disabilities. And there are some issues and concerns when it comes to AI and working with disabilities, and some challenges around that. So if you guys want to speak to that idea a little bit, or what are some of the ways that
it's like what Valary said, the LLMs only know what they know. So they can only import, spit out what they've been given and what they've learned from other people. So if the vast majority of people are not you're not disabled, it's not going to have that connection, that approach, that way to create. So it almost has to, again, you almost have to learn to design prompts that explain that in the context to the LLM in order for it to design or to approach or to give an output that matters to that person. So I think that is one. Whereas we advocate more and we bring more attention to it, that it will improve, much like everything else once you get attention to something. But, kind of like one of the notes that we had there, where PowerPoint now has that tool in there where it will give those live captions on there, which can be kind of entertaining based on how you speak, the cadence and your clarity.
I've been a victim of that in a live class.
Yes, being able to
wonderfully distracting for learners.
Exactly, but it's being able to take these. How are we going to address those things, and especially for the ESL type environment. I mean, I think that is where AI can really help. But how can it better help them learn instead of just rewriting something that doesn't communicate or share their voice?
Yeah, that's and the humorous I'm still laughing with humorous captions, but yeah, I mean, I'm not I have not always been a huge advocate of Microsoft, but they have put a lot of effort into the ESL part of it.
Mhm.
So yeah, the captions can be live translated, which is just mind blowing. Like when the first time I saw it, I was like, we're in the future. Okay, we're in the
Yeah.
future. It's good.
Giving them the
It's cool
option.
here.
Mhm.
Yeah,
They may not be able to read well,
Mhm.
yeah.
but they can listen. So
They
if we're
can
giving them
listen.
those tools to be
Mhm.
able to listen that way,
Yeah, yeah.
it really can make a lot of big difference.
And sometimes it's and this I get some flack from my hardcore instructional designers when I say things like this. Sometimes it's more about showing that you're trying,
Mhm.
that it's not perfect. We know the captions are not perfect. Everybody understands that. Even if you have a live transcriptionist
Mhm.
doing it, the accuracy is 99 point, it's like it's not going to be it's, there's always going to be those little, blips. But I think there's a huge, and I think people get worried. I was hosting a webinar recently and there were a lot of questions because instructors were like panicked. They were like, well, but what if I don't like do it right? Or what if I miss something? Or, and kind of the general message was do your best. Do your best. We understand that we're all learning, and sometimes that's hard for the instructors and the experts to kind of be in that space of I'm not the expert about this piece of my class. Like I'm the expert of the topic, but I'm not necessarily the expert of everything around it. And I understand that's kind of stressful for them. But just that message of, as long as we're trying to get better at it, I think I don't want people to like overly stress
Mhm.
needlessly. I want people to work toward this, but I was seeing the panic in some of these
Mhm.
instructors, and I was like, okay, we've now gone way too far because now that's not helpful. If you're spending all of your time like so concerned about
Yeah.
Mhm.
I might mess up or I might have forgotten to, like we mentioned PDFs earlier. PDFs are notoriously not accessible
Right.
unless you know how to structure them, and a lot of people don't. And so
Mhm.
like it's like, but somebody providing the PDF is trying to provide, they're doing the universal design and they're trying
Mhm.
to give the different options and they might miss something. And then we just, we build as we go.
Well,
Yeah.
institutions panic.
Yeah.
I had that with I was teaching a course in about 2 weeks before the course started. The disability office accessibility reached out to me and said, "You're going to have a student in your course next session who's blind. Is your course ready? Is it accessible for this person?" I mean, they were in a panic, and
Yeah.
of course, I did it. I
Yeah.
was prepared, and I said, "Relax, we're good. We've got this." And we can do all these other things and everything that's all in there, and we're happy to work with the student. If there's something like to your point, I can only do so much. If there's something beyond, please reach out to me and let me know.
Yeah.
But again, it's the institutions as well as the students can
Sure.
make the best effort that they can,
Yeah.
but they should be, everyone should be prepared. I mean, you
Yeah.
don't know what type of
Mhm.
situation, and like Angela's talked about before, not everybody is with an accessible need is going to tell you.
Right.
Exactly.
No.
Exactly. Yeah. And I would say just document what you're doing, both
Mhm.
for the office, the administrative people who like if there is a question later about, well, was Sheila's class really accessible? We told her she was going to have you have the documentation as to these are the steps we have taken. But I think
Right.
that also helps new people as they're coming into your institution to understand what are the rules here. How far have you all gone in your accessibility journey? And same thing with the AI journey. Like, what are your AI governance policies? What are the rules here? So I think that's part of it too, is having that, clear documentation about what's going on and what the intention is, and then
Mhm.
again do the best you
Don't
can.
ignore, have a
Mhm.
Yeah.
conversation,
Yeah.
Exactly.
bring it up. Like you
Yeah.
said, I think the AI part of it is how are you going to use it? What is the expectation?
Yeah.
Um, Institutions have been a little slow in adopting AI policies.
Hmm.
I don't know if they just had a little head in the sand and thought, oh, it's not a problem. It's not, but I mean, just like we can teach people to be smarter. We can teach everyone to focus in the design to the little a, which I think, is more important. overall, perhaps because if you go to the little a, the big A will be covered in terms of accessibility. So it's taking the steps and just to get started.
Yeah, and I'm again going to advocate for collaborating with our learners. I think about just instances in the last few weeks where I was subbing, teaching a class in a classroom that I'm never in, a class that I don't usually teach. And so a student helped me figure out just how to plug my laptop in and project it. And that's when I ended up with hilarious captioning. But I'm so grateful because, it was the learners that helped me get the classroom ready in the way that they needed that classroom ready. Or how many times I'm teaching virtually, and so many of us have had this experience where we're giving a presentation or where we are facilitating someone else giving that presentation. And we all know that panic of, wait, I don't know how to make my slides appear in this format, right? Whether it's, oh, I'm so used to Zoom, I never use Teams, things like that. So again, relying on the learners to help give us information about what they need. So whether that's when we're setting up in the moment or checking in a few minutes in to say, can you hear me okay? Can you see everything okay? I mean, all of those really simple things that instead of this idea that we have to go in perfect, like Valary was talking about, that panic that we have to have it all figured out, we want to be prepared, but also to check in with those learners. Again, if we're in a live session or even in our online asynchronous classrooms, at midway through week one, at the end of week one, what else would be helpful to you? I've just really started to ask that question to all of my students, especially when they do not disclose that they have a disability or an accommodation need. I think it opens the door for the conversation when I say, what else would be helpful to you? As we enter, after we've done the first week, what do you need? And to get answers from them, I'm always surprised by the simplicity of what would be helpful to them as well. They're never asking for much, maybe because I've worked with Sheila so long that I've gotten so much better about designing accessible and inclusive classrooms.
That's it.
They're usually a really simple request, and it's something small that would be helpful to them. And I'm always so glad I asked, because I'm like, oh gosh, I wish you would have told me that last week. We could have overcome this.
Yeah.
Or hey, go back, redo that now that we have this information. So I think relying on our learners to collaborate with us and help us know what they need, or that maybe they're the expert on that technology piece. I love when that's the case. When I get into a classroom, they're like, oh, I'm in this classroom all the time. I know how to fix this. I know how to make this work. Oh, your audio's not on. Here's how you do it. And I love when I can learn from them.
Well, you're also, I think what you're also doing, what you're also talking around is you're remembering the human, like you're bringing the humanity back into it. We're talking today about AI and all, the tech and all, but the learners appreciate that. And I always try to remind, instructors of that too. And I know I get a little pushback on it because I was like, oh no, I'm the expert. I can't make a mistake. It's like, well, no, don't give them wrong information, but be human about it. So yeah, if you got into a classroom and you didn't know where the plug was, like that's a human experience, and learners appreciate that because it does it starts to build those little moments that then they feel more comfortable talking to you, and they felt more comfortable probably coming to you and saying, by the way, I had this accommodation, I didn't want to say anything, but it helps to build that relationship. So I think that's another thing as we're designing, back to the designing part, like the more we can use AI to build activities that force them to be human, that encourage them to go talk to another human being, that have them speak their answer rather than using AI to, now they could make a fake video. Yes, I know there's we can go down the rabbit holes, but if it's a live session, that's a little harder to do. But I think just, remembering, the best technology is the technology that gets out of our way and lets the students and instructors and students work together. So, as we have these conversations around big tech things, and I think that was part of to the AI governance thing. I don't think people thought it was going away. I think there was just, oh my gosh, this is a huge disruption, and we don't want to make the wrong choice. Is kind of what I was hearing. Like everybody was kind of waiting for somebody else to say something so that they could have a little, like, okay, yeah, okay, we're all in this together, and we're, and then some some different, associations and schools and different things started to come out with some frameworks, and so now I think that's helping with that conversation. But yeah, I think that's a much when I get requests for webinars and stuff, originally it was just how do I use AI, and now it's definitely more on the ethics, governance, and the deeper questions.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
And I think this goes well into our last topic, and that's this idea of educators and instructional designers. How do we use AI for accessibility? And I often think about those guidelines because so many times they are restrictive. And most schools that I work with, they've got some type of spectrum, right? Because it depends on the instructor, it depends on the content, the field of study, what makes sense for using AI and what level of it to use it. And at the same time, it's really helped me rethink some things about our more traditional like syllabus policies, right? And thinking about, oh, well, I do want students to use their phone in my classroom, and here's why.
yeah.
And so let's rethink some of those cell phone bans and things like that. So, what are some of the ways that you guys think are important as we think about it as educators and instructional designers and creators
Yeah.
that we can be incorporating AI into our accessibility and like really practical suggestions for our listeners?
It's kind of starting with you to stop and think. Like Valerie was saying, when you're designing a course, okay, I have to have a reading, I have to have a lecture, then we're gonna have a discussion, and then I'm gonna have an assignment, and repeat, repeat, repeat. Maybe there's a different way. If we're looking at it from inclusivity as well as accessibility, how can you provide students options? I've incorporated some of that in my own, experimented with it in my own courses that I teach. Students love it, where I'm giving them options for how to submit something. So they are able to submit to their strength. Maybe they wanted to make a video. Maybe they want to do PowerPoint. Maybe they want to write a paper. And I thought I was going to get the same thing, but they love it because some of them hate PowerPoint. Some of them love it. I mean, they can show mastery in ways that build to their strengths and be able to do that. So that is where AI can really help you. So maybe as an instructor, you're sitting there going, well, I don't know how, you're me. How do I do that? I don't, I'm just used to somebody writing a paper, or they got to make a video, or what do I do? AI can help you. That's where the brainstorm with the prompts will sit there. How can I, this is what I'm looking to achieve for this type of assessment. These are the outcomes I need to do.
Yeah.
What are some ways that I can give students options to create this, to show mastery? And then it can help you do the expectations of the rubrics, and it just keeps going. So it's looking at it from a different perspective. How can I, again, from the beginning, don't just go down your, lecture readings, this, and then figure out how you're going to do it. You're spinning your wheel, don't start there. So it's taking that approach. But that makes it accessible. It makes it inclusive. You can see what types of maybe third-party software you can incorporate in there. But it's stopping and putting a little thought.
Yeah, I love that. I think I would add, remember that AI can make you more agile.
Mhm.
To those sort of correction points. Maybe
Mhm.
you've done the part Sheila talked about, and you've got the options and you've got the things. But this is your opportunity if you see that a particular module is just not going well, or they're not getting it, or whatever the case is. Don't forget that, like, everything's not written in stone. I understand there's curriculum issues, but like when we're like in the trenches
Mhm.
trying to teach something, like if somebody needs an additional help in some ways, those are great, like, little off ramps to use the AI to go, okay, this is what we're doing, this is not quite working, we're getting this outcome, what can we what can we do to switch that up? So I think the agility factor is is,
Mhm.
is also like hugely important. And just kind of back to sort of Sheila's conversation too, but even at, I'm going to go up a couple of thousand feet, I think. Just starting with why. Why are you using AI to begin with? Are you using it just because you heard everybody's using it for their classes, and like,
Right.
I'm not saying don't use it. I have the same conversations with people about gamification and other learning experience strategies. Like, why? Like, what is it you want to change or affect or do in your course? Like, are you
Mhm.
having trouble with completion rates? Are you having trouble with, getting student interactions? Like, what is the engagement challenge or the learning challenge that you're trying to solve holistically? And then to Sheila's point, then you can like make those better choices.
Mhm.
But I think sometimes we people do this with we mentioned PowerPoint. I used to teach PowerPoint, and people would just like dive into the PowerPoint, and it's like you don't even know what you're going to be talking about in your presentation. Like that's like you just want to draw some boxes. Okay, I'm going to give you 5 minutes. We're just going to draw some boxes because I know otherwise you're not going to listen to me. But it's that same sort of. I don't want people to feel trapped in that like I have to infuse AI
Mhm.
into everything I'm doing in my class now because AI is the thing. So that's, I guess, my add there.
Mhm.
No, I think that's very valid because we see that. I mean, think about the little tools that we've seen over the years, VoiceThread, Yellow Dig, all these things that were incorporated in there. And technology is great, but exactly your point, what's the purpose? And if you can use AI to solve those big problems that especially if you're redoing a course,
Mhm.
that's a perfect time.
Yeah.
Guy, they always fail at modules 4 and 6, or they get there and AI can help you kind of think through things where you get stuck because you're looking at it from your perspective. And if you don't have, I don't have Angela that I can run something. Hey, look at this for me. Am I covering this right? I can't do this.
Right.
You can use those types of support tools within AI to help you, just like it could with a student, how it can help you suggest some improvements and make something better.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I have an example of that from just this week, Sheila. I had talked to students live and in person at the end of the semester about, I felt a little stuck with how we did this one week. What do you guys think? And they gave me some feedback. And as I was working on updating the course over the summer here, thinking, okay, I'm stuck still. Like they told me what they want it to look like, but I'm not sure how to make that happen. And I was thinking about how many times students tell me that they use AI like they would Google. And so I went into AI and I wrote out a description like I was having a conversation. Here's the conversation I had with students. Here's where I'm stuck. Provide 3 suggestions
Mhm.
of or examples of ways that I might do this differently next time. And it was great because I ended up with 3 suggestions and I decided on a mashup of them as I'm updating this curriculum. So just like I'm always coaching my students, you need to take the suggestion, edit it, make it your own. But it was wonderful to have a collaborative partner, some other tool that was going to scour the internet for me and come up with ways that other instructors may have worked this into their classrooms. And so again, a collaborative approach with my students and with the AI to hopefully create a different learning experience when I teach this class again.
I love that. And I love just when you have a conversation with AI with AI like that, where you're like, oh, here's some ideas that different people, and then you go through all your different prompts and whatever. Quite often, something like that, my last prompt is always, especially if it's been a really long, convoluted sort of thing, my last prompt is always something like, please review our conversation and tell me what my original prompt should have been to get to this outcome, because
Mhm.
then you can save that as a starting point. Now it's not going to be perfect for the next thing because the next thing is going to be
Mhm.
slightly different, but I think that's also a great learning opportunity for us and for students to kind of go, okay, we kind of went through this thinking process, because it helps us kind of see our own critical thinking, but it also helps us to understand how the AI is thinking,
Mhm.
Mhm.
and how we can get to a better outcome in those brainstormings with it.
Mhm.
So
Great, ladies. This has been a fantastic conversation. Is there anything else that you think is important that we should share about AI and accessibility before we wrap up today?
Just think. Take time and think. That's all you need to do, and then use it where it's smart.
yeah, I would say, yeah, just keep experimenting. It's,
Mhm.
just keep trying things. Don't get an answer and just kind of stick with it. Don't build that one template and then use it forever. Keep trying. Keep
Mhm.
trying stuff.
Great. Thank you so much for joining me today. This has been a great conversation about AI and accessibility.
Thank you.
Thanks.
This episode of DigitalEDU Dialogues is brought to you by the Babb Group. The demands for teaching and online learning are constantly evolving. Don't get left behind. Carve out a competitive edge and give students engaging learning experiences with support from the Babb Group's team of course design experts. As experienced online faculty and instructional designers, the Babb Group knows how to craft those aha moments for students and meet outcomes for every modality, online, hybrid, and face-to-face, creating engaging, welcoming, and inclusive learning spaces for students of all ages and abilities has never been more important. Discover how the Babb Group can help you by visiting their website today.